Hello everyone. I am Dr. Susangfa Gogoi, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, North Lakhimpur College Autonomous. Welcome you all to your very own channel, e-Politica. Today, we are going to discuss on a very important issue pertaining to contemporary world politics, that is emergence of two power blocks. Now, this particular concept has been associated with the previous module on Cold War. If you have missed the previous module, kindly go to the channel and check module number 8. So today we will talk about emergence of two power blocks. For the students, I would like to tell you that this is associated with the unit 1 of political science of class 12 syllabus. What are the learning objectives of this module? The objectives of this module are to learn what is two power blocks, to understand who were the countries participating in the two power blocks, to evaluate how power blocks are institutionalized, to analyze why the small nations are participating in the power block politics, to estimate why these superpowers dependent on the smaller nations. Therefore, after you complete listening to this module, you'd be able to answer to these queries. Let us begin. Now, as you all know, in the previous module also, I have already informed you that after the Second World War, the world was already divided into two blocks. These two power blocks at the beginning was mostly proliferated in the European continent. If you look at into this map, you can see that how the Europe was under control of two superpowers. The countries with yellow mark were the countries who were under United States of America's one important institution called NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the countries with red mark were the countries who were under Soviet Union. And these countries were under the dominance of another important organization called Warsaw Pact. Now, this particular image or map made it clear that the entire Europe has been bifurcated into two power blocks. One power block was dominated by United States of America, and the other one was dominated by USSR. Now, who are these two power blocks? By and large, these two power blocks are known as Western Bloc and Eastern Bloc. Western Bloc were those countries who were led by United States of America, and mostly those are the Western European countries. Whereas the Eastern Bloc consisted of the Eastern European countries, and they were led by United States of Soviet Russia, that is Soviet Union. This bifurcation or division of Europe into two power blocks has been related with the idea of politics of sphere of influence. As in the previous module, I have already discussed what is sphere of influence, but again, for the convenience of student, let me again explain what is sphere of influence. Previously, I told you all the powerful country, they want to maintain a pressure or maintain a control over the neighboring countries by the means of economic military sanctions. So therefore, they want to enhance the areas of influence of the countries. And to do so, they try to manipulate or control the internal affairs of the smaller countries and try to dominate them in different means, through different means. Now it is noticed that the superpowers, especially United States of America and USSR, they had adopted many diplomatic ways to enhance this sphere of influence. For example, here we can give example of the former president of United States of America, Truman, who came up with a policy called Truman Doctrine. Through that policy, he wanted to control the European countries who were previously under the control of Soviet Union. So to revive their economy in the name of constructing the economy of those countries, he has advised to enhance the American control. So these kind of diplomatic policies were being adopted by the leaders of both the power blocs so that the sphere of influence can be enhanced. Initially, the sphere of influence was targeted to European continent alone, but slowly it also has started targeting the Asian countries as well. So it is very important to notice that these superpowers directly or indirectly try to enhance its sphere of influence by giving different kinds of diplomatic, political, economic kind of policies. And the French countries of these superpowers help them in many ways to increase their sphere of influence. Here we can take example of China. China, more particularly, as we all know, they are the followers of socialist and communist ideology, and they were the fan of Soviet Union. China tried to maintain a good relationship with their neighboring countries. For example, um, you know, North Vietnam, North Korea, and Iraq. So these are the classical example by which we can say that both the superpowers that try to enhance their sphere of influence so that they can be more powerful in comparison to that of the other bloc of the Cold War. Now let us talk about who are the member countries of these blocs. If you look at into this particular table, you can see that the member countries of the Western Bloc were Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Germany, West Germany, Greece, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Spain, Turkey, UK, and United States of America. Whereas the countries who supported the Eastern Bloc were Albania, Bulgaria, Cuba, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Mongolia, Poland, Romania, Soviet Union, Vietnam, and North Korea. So that's why it can be quite evident that most of the European countries, they were split into two blocks. The Western European countries were supporting the American-led bloc, whereas the Eastern European countries were supporting the USSR's bloc. Now, what are the ways were being used by the superpowers in order to establish the two power blocks? Let us have an eye on it. During this particular period, at the beginning of Cold War, it was noticed that both USA and USSR, they have adopted many ways and they have created so many institutions so that they can institutionalize these two power blocks. And one of the important initiatives taken in this line was the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. In short, it is also known as NATO, NATO. Now, after the Second World War, when Germany was collapsed, so the responsibility of the Germany was split in the hands of USA and USSR. The Western Germany was handed to USA, whereas the Eastern Germany was handed to USSR. It was noticed that Berlin, which was a border area of the Eastern Germany, it was under the US's dominance. What USA tried to maintain a uniform financial conduct over Berlin. They tried to introduce similar kind of currency that was being offended by the USSR. So what USSR did, they have declared a Berlin blockade. So they have blocked all the ways for communication with Berlin by USA, roadways, or waterways, everything was blocked so that there would be complete cut off with the Berlin. So from 1947 to 1948, there was this Berlin blockade. Interestingly, USA was not prepared enough to face this kind of blockade made by USSR. So it shows the non-preparedness of the Western military. So therefore, the Western camp or Western bloc, they have started rethinking on their security paradigms. So therefore, in the year 1948, the countries of Western Europe, they have signed one important treaty. The name of the treaty was Brussels Defense Treaty. It was also known as BTD in short. Now, the ambition of this BTD was to make an arrangement for future so that any kind of war to be fight back together by the Western European countries with some kind of a military collaboration. So therefore, this Brussels Treaty, Defense Treaty, was very important for the security purpose. Interestingly, this BTD was joined by countries like USA, Canada, Portugal, Denmark, Iceland, Italy, and Norway. And later, this BTD was reformulated as NATO. So in the year April 1949, with the members of 12 countries, this NATO was created under the leadership of United States of America. And the whole purpose of creation of NATO was to ensure collective security. Now, what is collective security? Collective security has been considered as a means by which a country, some countries can come together and form a union where an attack on any member to be considered as an attack to the whole, and they will come forward to support the member countries. So it's something like a collective or cooperative military defense arrangement was made under the banner of NATO. Interestingly, in the year 1955, USSR, they have also started with their own institutions so that their bloc can also be strengthened militarily. And one of such initiative was taken by USSR was Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact, which was signed in the year 1955, it was signed by Russia and his satellite allies once the Western Germany was admitted to NATO. So when the Western Germany was admitted not to NATO, it was an alarming situation for USSR. So therefore, they have immediately signed this Warsaw Pact. Now, Warsaw Pact has been considered as a same collective defense treaty. It was signed by Soviet Union along with the 7 other Soviet satellite states of the Central and Eastern Europe, namely Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland, and Romania. And this pact was mostly created as a mutual defense agreement, and Western country blamed it, criticized it or perceived it as a reaction against the West Germany's membership to NATO. So many people say that it is only because of counter the military arrangement or collective security paradigm called NATO, USSR had created this Warsaw Pact. So it shows the kind of military competition that was going on in Europe regarding these two power blocks. As I have told you in the beginning of this presentation, that not only in the Europe, these kind of two power blocks were noticed, slowly and steadily, these two power blocks also started proliferating in the regions of Asia. It was noticed that USA, more particularly, it tries to proliferate its sphere of influence in the East, Southeast Asian and West Asian countries. And to succeed in proliferating their sphere of influence, United States of America, they have created two important organizations by taking into account the membership of the Asian countries. The name of the institutions were Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, in short it is also known as SEATO, and the Central Treaty Organization, which is in short known as CENTO. So this SEATO and CENTO was created under the leadership of USA so that the sphere of influence of USA could also be enhanced from Europe to the Asian continent. Now let us talk about what were the reasons behind the smaller countries to participate in these power politics. Now there must be some reason, why the smaller countries were participating. Broadly, some of the reasons of participation of smaller countries in this two power block politics are: number one, reconstruction of the economy. As you all know that due to the First World War and the Second World War, the economy of the smaller countries were completely devastated. So in order to revive the economic conditions, the market, the infrastructure, the industries, the smaller countries need to depend largely on the big countries or the powerful countries. So therefore, the smaller countries, they were participating in the power politics. The second reason was reconstruction of military. As you all know, during a time of a war, not only the economy of a country which got suffered, the military infrastructure also got suffered a lot. So therefore, to revive the military infrastructure of the smaller countries tend to depend largely on these powerful countries, that is the USA and USSR. For example, USSR more particularly, after the Second World War, they have started giving lots of investment for military reconstruction of the Eastern European countries. Both arms and ammunitions or also financial assistance for recreating the military hubs of these countries. So this was the second reason why the smaller countries, they were joining the power blocks. The next reason was maintenance of status quo and survival. Now, in international politics, it is very important to maintain the status quo of a country at the international realm. No country in the world wants to be considered as a fragile country or as a weak country. So how can a small country can become powerful? Only by aligning with a strong country or as a powerful country. So that is the one reason why the smaller countries, they try to identify themselves in association with a superpower bloc. So they want to survive in the game of competition in the world politics. So that is another important reason that why smaller countries are participating in the power bloc politics. The fourth important reason why the smaller countries were participating was security for future. It is very important to note in this connection that most of the smaller countries, they have lots of small border issues or conflict with the neighboring countries. In order to avoid the future confrontation with the neighboring country, they need to largely depend on these power blocks. For example, here we can talk about the Korean crisis, where the North Korea and South Korea were fighting each other, and to fight back, they tend to rely on largely on these two superpowers. So that is a classical example that how the smaller countries were being using the superpowers to securitize their future. So these are the reasons why the smaller countries are joining the power blocks. Now let us try to answer why the superpowers are dependent on the smaller nations. It is very important to note in this connection that not only the smaller countries who are dependent on the superpowers were also dependent on the smaller nations. There were few reasons why they were dependent on. The first one was controlling of natural resources. The smaller countries of Europe and Asia, they were quite known for their natural resources. For example, they were known for oil, they were known for mineral. In order to control the oil sectors and mineral sector of these smaller countries, the powerful countries, the superpowers, try to make relationship with them. So therefore, that is the one reason why the superpower country, they were trying to depend on the smaller countries. Number two was use of territory. Now, as you all know, that sometimes due to the geopolitical location or geostrategic location of one country, they cannot directly confront the future war with the opponent country. For that, they tend to depend on the territory of other countries. So many a time in international politics, the superpowers using the neighboring countries or the another superpower as the buffer zone, or they were using it for the future attack. Here we can talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis. As you all know, Cuba has been considered is one of the most neighboring countries of America who had a very hostile history with US. During the time of Cold War, USSR used Cuba in order to put the United States of America under some kind of a pressure. So it shows how the territory of another country can be used for some kind of a military or diplomatic pressure. The next one was use them for activities of spying. These smaller countries were also used by the big countries to get information from the superpowers. So this spying has been considered as one of the important activities of international relations. So to use these smaller countries in the business of spy, the big country were dependent on them. The next reason was the economic assistance. Not only the smaller countries were dependent on the big countries for economic reconstruction, many a time the big countries or the powerful countries were also dependent on the smaller countries for economic assistance. So to create common economic cooperation with the smaller countries, the superpowers were dependent on the smaller countries. So that is the another reason why the smaller countries, the superpowers are dependent on the smaller nations. The last reason why the superpowers were dependent on the smaller nations was popularization of their ideology. As I have already told you that both United States of America and Soviet Union, they followed two different kind of ideologies. For example, United States of America, they were following liberal democracy and capitalism, whereas Soviet Union, they follow socialism and communism. So to popularize their political ideology, they need some member country so that they can push their ideology to these smaller countries. So therefore, these smaller countries were used by the superpowers so that their ideology can be developed or it can be popularized. So these are the reasons why the superpowers dependent on the smaller nations. So with this, I would like to wind up of today's session. What we have learned today, let us have a very quick recap. Today we talk about what do we mean by two power bloc, who are the countries participating in the two power blocks, what are the institutions used by these superpower blocks so that the superpower bloc can be institutionalized, what are the reasons of the smaller countries to join these superpower blocks, and what are the reasons why the superpowers country also dependent on these smaller nations. If you have any queries and questions, please feel free to write to me in comment section. You are watching e-Politica. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe the channel, and keep viewing e-Politica so that you can be updated with the coming videos on political science. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.